Evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's 5:31, Tuesday, December 30th, 2025. I hope you all got the message about last night. We tried to get it out as quickly as we could. We're canceling the meeting. And by the way, Laura is online. She's on Zoom. Okay, great. Good evening, Laura. Do we have any agenda changes or additions?
No.
Community comments. Do we have any community comments? Okay. I just remind you to speak to issues that are not on the agenda. In other words, not recreation, not local options tax, or not budget.
Not budget?
Not budget.
Okay, so I should.
We will be talking about budget later.
Oh.
Community comments are restricted to just non-agenda items, since we'll have ample opportunity later to talk about it. Any community comments? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to go on to new business. So we have three items. First up is recreation. Is Adele on?
Yeah.
There she is.
Yes, I am.
Good evening, Adele.
Good evening, everyone.
Thank you for joining us. So Adele and Brent are going to give us a follow-up on recreation.
Adele, you just want to take it?
I will. Yeah. Yeah, we just wanted to kind of update you as what Brent and I have been doing as far as researching and exploring some summer program options, what other local communities are doing. We've had conversations with schools, municipal programs, and private organizations. From the school systems, we found that most schools, Morristown Elementary, Hyde Park, Johnson, all offer school-based summer programs, but they're specifically for students and they're usually an invitation only. For municipal programs, Johnson Recreation, I spoke with Isabel Sullivan, who's their part-time rec coordinator. Johnson offers a variety of individual programs for all ages: soccer, skiing, ski and ride, swim lessons, gymnastics, basketball, etc. But they do not operate any type of summer day camp program or any other day camp program. I forwarded the select board. I think you guys all received a copy.
Oh,
Sorry, I accidentally muted myself. So that kind of covers what some of those activities are and what the costs are for those programs. Stowe Recreation, Brent spoke with them last year and found out that limited space was available. The registration opens first to local residents of Stowe and then to non-residents. I have reached out to them to see how many non-resident spots they typically have and to find out whether their programming is available and qualifies for financial assistance. I do know that they have scholarships, but they're specific to Stowe residents as well. Brent and I also met with Unbound and Apple Tree, two existing programs that are both based out of the Morristown school facilities. Unbound is run by Amy Thompson. It's a program for grades 5 through 8, and it's Morristown and then communities that have school choice. So Wolcott, Elmore. And then it's limited to those grades. They can't do anything other than 5 through 8 because they have a 5-year grant and they're currently on year 2 or 3. I can't remember which one it was. This program was definitely successful and met the community needs for that age and grade levels last summer, and will do so again, I'm sure. Like any program, they're limited to numbers. Amy also provided us with some state of Vermont contacts related to grant programs and just overall knowledge and understanding of summer programs and what's needed. And I've reached out to both of those individuals as well. I have not heard back from one, but I did. One person did reach out to me today. And the suggestion was there is a program, a grant that might be applicable, but it's too late in this year to apply for it. So I will get more information about that. We also met with Apple Tree with Sonia Raymond, who's one of the owners, and Nicole Walker, who is one of the directors. It's a privately owned and operated. It's established on site. It's at Morristown Elementary School. They run out of the gymnasium currently in the summers, and I think they also have a after school care program there. For 2025, they served grades 1 through 4. And they have only 27 spots that they're able to fill. So priority is given to returning campers. The program qualifies for financial assistance, and many of the people that attend are on that support. And they also have new need-based scholarships. They were listening and maybe a little interested in the expansion, but there are some requirements. One, it would need more space than what they're currently using in the gymnasium, and it would need to be very, very close by so that they could stick to the camp ratio and only have one camp director. The town offered that to be involved in that discussion around the space needs. It would also require increased staffing, and this is a major concern of theirs. They emphasize that multiple times. They prefer to use year-round staff, but they supplement it in the summer with college-age students or above. They don't hire anyone from high school unless it's someone who's gone up with their program all along. We've offered to refer any of our qualified staff from the past to have worked what we've worked with and we feel strongly would be a good fit. They would also need the school and supervisory union approval, and the town will participate and support in those conversations as well. Apple Tree is going to review the expansion feasibility internally, and then they'll follow up with us in early January, and the possible next steps will most likely be to meet with the superintendent, which we would be a part of. We do continue to reach out to additional summer programs and organizations as we're finding them, and to explore partnerships and solutions to provide summer programs for the community. That's all I have for the summer camp program. I also wanted to just give you an update on the ice rink. And Mike and Barry have been working really hard to stay ahead of the weather, and that hasn't been easy with the rain. Mike stopped by today and told me that it did weather pretty well this last bit of rain. Also, to let you know that the trailer is on site and skates are ready to use, free to community members. They just need to reach out to me. I'm also working with a high school senior who's interested in community service, and he'll be able to be at the rink a few hours over the weekends to make those skates accessible to others. And that's all I have.
So if I could just recap, we've been busy reaching out to not only municipalities, but to other potential partners. Again, Hyde Park and Johnson, the towns and villages, do not have any summer camp programs, while Johnson does have year-round recreation programs. And again, Adele forwarded that to you all several weeks ago, the budget and the programs that they run. But they rely on their schools for their summer camps. So we're reaching out to other entities, and again, Apple Tree could be promising, but they were really reticent about staffing. They experienced the same staffing issues that we've experienced, but they showed an interest in considering working with us. So we'll know more in a couple of weeks. They really have to assess it.
Well, I think you've answered my big question, and that's just about availability. It sounds like Stowe has limited space available. And their scholarships, you said, were for Stowe residents only. Hyde Park and Johnson, they don't have a town-run camp, but their schools do run a camp. Do we have any idea whether those schools would?
It's just for their students.
Just for their students.
My understanding on the school programs, it's usually educationally based and need-based. I don't know that it's just, I don't believe they ever open them up to the public. It's students that they assess that need to be in some type of program, educational program for the summer.
Do you have any sense for Unbound, how much space, if any, they might have?
For additional students?
Correct.
It would still be grades 5 through 8. and that's restricted. And they took all of our students 5 through 8 last year. Morristown only ran a program for grades 1 through 4.
Okay.
So we referred
So-
all 5th through 8th.
Yes, all were referred, correct.
Coordinated with them. This year it doesn't look like that would be feasible. There's possibility that if we were able to apply for a grant and in partnership with them, that 1 through 4 could be added, potentially next year.
What wouldn't be feasible?
1 through 4,
They
obtaining a grant.
cannot add 1 through 4 with their grant status.
And they
Yeah.
being unbound. Right.
Unbound as it's structured today with their grant that they received to run, and they applied for another grant as well, but it does not include, it cannot be rewritten, it can't be amended. It's grades 5 through 8.
But they'd be willing to take our 5th through 8th graders.
Yep, I imagine most of those kids, if they were part of the program, their program, the Unbound program last year, will be going back. Yeah.
Other question? I see a hand up there. Is there a question here first? Yeah, I see Laura. Laura? You're muted. Go ahead.
Thanks. First of all, I just want to thank Adele for all her work, and encourage us to keep looking for programs that accept the child care credits, because we're all paying it. I do want to add, in past years, like this year, they came out and said rec broke even, but I just want to be careful that we're not including our staff time. So I did a little calculations. If we assume one day for the whole season for everybody that was involved, that time very lightly is about $3,792. So I think just going forward, we need to be aware that our staff have limited time and things they are hired to do. So I just want us to be respectful of our staff, that we just don't assume that they're available at a whim to do whatever we want them to do. And it should go into the calculations so people understand what the true cost is to the town. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Any other comments from the board? I too would thank you, Adele and Brent, for doing this. We did ask you to look into this for us a couple of weeks ago, so it's good information to have about what's really going on around us, so we're not basing it upon rumors or what some of us might think is going on. So thank you. Any comments from the audience? Okay, I'm going to move on then. Okay, thank you very much, Adele.
You're very welcome.
So number 2 is we have in our packets here a draft of articles, local option tax articles. We as a board have agreed to bring articles to the town for voters to consider at town meeting. And the wording is in our packet. And what administration is looking for tonight is they're looking for some direction from us. We don't necessarily need to pass a motion on this, but they just need some direction on how to go forward with this. So as we can see, there's 3 separate articles. There's one around sales, there's one around meals and alcohol, and there's one around rooms. There is language specific to sales, language specific to meals and alcohol, it's language specific to rooms. And then there's language that is the same for each of those articles. And I'll just read that because maybe that's where the conversation is going to be. And I think that's what administration needs to know. So just using sales as an example, shall the town of Morristown assess a 1% tax on sales pursuant to 24 VSA section 138B. That the language that's common to each of these would be revenue will be dedicated to funding capital expenditures and projects, debt reduction, reserve funds for future capital projects or repairs, other emergency needs, economic and community development, or to reduce the municipal property tax collected on the grand list without increasing total town revenues. I think that's really where our conversation needs to be. What do we think of that? For me, it certainly covers the infrastructure that I would hope revenue from a local option tax would go towards. We've talked a lot about infrastructure in this room. We've talked a lot about infrastructure at these meetings, and we've talked about the fact that LOT does bring in that needed revenue for the town. There's no doubt that we need the money, we need the revenue. Revenue is, we're going to talk more about it later when we get to the budget, but that seems to be the big issue. We've also said at many meetings and told the public that have listened to these meetings that we would give them information upon how this money would be spent, how it would be allocated, how it would be targeted. And this is the language that we have in front of us. So I guess the question at this point, at this junction is, how do we feel about this language? Anybody want to start the conversation? Leah.
When I first joined the board, it was what, October maybe? And I joined the discussion about local option tax, and the conversation at the time was a lot about the needs for roads and paving. And I thought, that's great, that would be a project for the local option tax. And then as I learned more and then saw the budget, it was like, it's way more than just roads and paving that we need the local option tax for. Because in the course of just since October to now, we've talked about roads and paving, which I believe year 2 was $642,000. We've also talked about the need for work done on this building with a serious leak and serious issues with the top floor that we also need for space. And we've also talked about, I got a tour of the police station, which has some true safety issues and some needs. So right there, that's 3 more major projects. So in my head, it was like, okay, it's not just a very project specific need, it's ongoing needs and also addressing the 15 years of deferred maintenance. So then I also went and looked around at other towns, how they positioned the local option tax and what language they used and how are they applying the local option tax, and came back with pretty much all of these listed in one way or another, sometimes one less, but for the most part, all the way across. The only thing that I would potentially add, and this is to make sure it's very specific, is that the use of this funds being attributed to a particular project would be voted on during a publicly warned meeting. So just so every voter knows that it's not something that we're just gonna say, okay, we're gonna spend the money that way, but it's something that would be decided upon at one of our regularly warned meetings or a special meeting if need be. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And by special project, is there like
Well, like paving or like emergency.
size or value to that makes it special?
Well, I think we have a definition already for capital. What's considered a capital expenditure, do we not?
Yeah, so it would be capital projects, but special projects might be a flooding event, a FEMA flooding event that causes immediate emergency fund needs. So as Leah's saying, it's not just roads, sidewalks, and bridges, it's various town-owned facilities, from the museum to this building, fire station, which is costing taxpayers money because the bays aren't long enough.
Just wanting
Libraries
need to surpass a certain dollar value for this idea that the voters would vote on it, because we don't want to go to the voters every time we want to spend
What's our cap?
any of this money necessarily.
10,000.
10,000. That'd be my own question.
And for some of those things, you're not gonna know that you're gonna have a need until you have a need. That might be too late. Or you might not have enough time to.
I think when you're talking about economic and community development, we're gonna discuss it here. And then weigh in on it and have a discussion, and some decision would be made during our select board meetings, which are publicly warned. So in other words, there's no surprises.
Yeah, can I ask for clarification, Tom?
Yeah, go ahead, George.
Did I misunderstand you, Leah, or are you saying, I hear you what you're saying about we need to be clear with the public about what we're doing with this money
Yes,
ahead of time?
yes.
Totally agree. Are you suggesting that there be a vote by the voters or a public meeting held by the board, which the voters obviously can attend and
And the
comment
select, and
on,
the select
but
board votes, and we,
the select board will be the one voting to
correct,
move forward or not
correct.
the voters in your scenario.
So it'd be a public hearing,
It-
not a public vote.
It's not a public vote. It's just that any decision we make is done in a public meeting that's been warned, as we normally do every time we meet. It's a warned meeting.
Okay, thank you, Leah.
You got two of them.
You're like
I don't need
press
to.
conference.
Okay, well, that takes care of my question. I was thinking you were talking about a public vote.
No, no, just that the select board would vote. The public is aware of it because it would be on the agenda.
But we typically do that with everything
Correct.
anyway, with the exception of anything that's already on the budget, right? I mean, I'm just wondering what
I
the
just wanted
difference
to-
is, or if it's
I
just,
wanted
you're
to
just
be very,
this.
very clear,
Okay. All right.
just very clear.
I mean, feedback from some residents, not all, just some, are that it's just more tax receipts for general spending. That's a concern for them. So my understanding of talking, Leah, is that this is, first of all, the way this is written, it's specific to only certain capital projects, debt service, pay down, what's listed here.
Mhm.
But also in addition, the voters can take additional comfort in the fact that the select board will have an open meeting and discuss before these funds are used. Now, that doesn't mean like for $5,000 or even $10,000 repair to a building or something is needed, that the select board will necessarily vote for that one specific item to come out of LOT, but it might mean that once or twice a year you're evaluating based upon immediate needs. And that might be, 3 or 4 projects around building infrastructure that comes in at $60,000 and has these one-off items included in it. That's the way, am I?
Yep.
I've also looked at what other towns have done, and the statute is very clear of what you can spend, what you can use LOT funds for. So you don't have to put anything in about how you would use it. And as a matter of fact, a lot of people say don't pigeonhole yourself, but you also have to address those people that might be concerned that you're using it just to spend on anything. So I think this was our attempt to create language that details what it may be used for and provides transparency for with the added language that Leah is providing even more transparency for the residents.
Just to be clear, Laura, you're up next, but just to be clear, what administration is looking for tonight is direction from us. And then this would be reviewed by legal counsel before.
Yeah, so any article, we have to have legal counsel review before you all vote and approve it. And so municipal legal counsel is especially busy this time of year. So as soon as possible, we need feedback from all. You've already voted that you want 3 separate articles. Now it's about what do you want in these specific articles, so that we can put it in front of legal counsel and get it back in time for you all to consider it and then be able to officially vote on the articles that will be presented to the voters.
Laura, thank you for being patient. Go ahead.
So, this is my 5th budget I've negotiated with this group. 2 have failed. two barely passed. And I've been adamant with everyone that we need to not treat taxpayer money as an open wallet. So I am not in favor of broad anything, everything, and deciding. We've had close to 50 meetings this year, so I don't want to have a meeting every time we need to spend money. I would like to see it dedicated. And as I have said in the past, referencing in support of Leah also, is that I think it needs to have a sunset. We are a very high taxed community. I think these LOTs are punitive to small business. I being one as the Morrisville Farmers Market. And I think it's punitive to our residents. So I would like to see it very targeted and focused to get very specific things done, and not at an a la carte open-ended fund. I'm very much against that.
I'd like
Go
to,
ahead.
Laura, I don't think, we're not talking about additional meetings. I think it's just making clear that if we are making a decision on how to spend LOT money, that it is being done at one of our regular select board meetings that it's on the agenda, and the agenda is warned in advance, and it's a public meeting. It would be done in our normal meetings, with a caveat if there's some type of emergency situation in which a special select board meeting needs to be called, as it normally would be. So it's not additional meetings. And I don't see this as being open-ended because it is to very specific, primarily capital expenditures and projects, and to reserve funds, basically to build up funds for future capital projects and debt reduction, which to me those are very specific things. And then other emergency needs. There's also the statement regarding to reduce the municipal property tax collected on the grand list without increasing total town revenues. That's to be specific, that we're just not lumping it in to whatever revenue the town receives. It's handled separately, and the dollars will be earmarked for, as you can read from the list, primarily capital expenditures and future capital projects or repairs.
Well, I understand what you're saying. However, we have an emergency fund set up. Tina can tell you how much money is sitting in there that we cannot touch for anything else. Open-ended, it does not have a close date. So to me, that's open-ended. If you add it to an agenda, as we are oftentimes going 4 hours, it's another agenda item, it's another discussion, and it's making it really, no one wants to be on the board because of the time commitment. It's really becoming a full-time job. And we need to be cognizant of that and start being far more efficient in what we're doing and how we're running these meetings. That's my opinion.
I'm going to respectfully disagree, because I think this is a very efficient way to be able to meet our capital needs. And he mentioned, Brent mentioned the bridge, which I had forgotten to talk about, which again was another project just between October and now that, as a new select board member, I learned about. And so just seeing the depth and breadth of capital expenditures that this town has, often because of deferred maintenance, 15 years of deferred maintenance. To me, this is effective, and it's the most efficient way for us to address this. And it will become really an efficient way, and it gives us some flexibility to address the town's needs rather than tying up in special meetings and in trying to come up with other ways.
Put a 5-year, 10-year cap on it, and that we reevaluate it, so that it's not a permanent 1% into perpetuity. That's all I'm asking.
Yeah, and to what you're saying, Leah, I mean, these major, we've always been talking about major capital expenditures. We've always been talking about major projects. Putting reserve funds for a public safety building, as you mentioned. These are already major agenda items that we've been discussing. I mean, how many times have we talked about roads and paving as items? How many times have we've talked about the bridge down in Katie's Falls now a couple of times as a separate item? So I think we're already doing that. I think they're already built into the agenda. I don't see it as a something new, something added to the agenda. It's not like it's going to be its own line. I think it's going to be built right into. And if we're talking about roads and paving and putting LOT money towards roads and paving, that's all going to be built into the same conversation. George?
Yep, thanks. I would respectfully disagree with Laura on the caps as well, on the sunset dates. In that, when we talk about capital expenditures and projects, and as Leah spoke to, we're talking about a police station, potentially. We're talking about a fire station, potentially. We're talking about things that are going to need bonds, 20-year bonds, probably, with the standard municipal bond bank arrangement that is going to have to happen. That's, in my mind, where I read debt reduction. We're sitting on a bond, and there's assumptions being made there that the design is acceptable in cost, that the voters approve that going out to bond. But then we're going to have 20 years of debt to address that. If the voters say yes to a bond, there's two places to get the money, in my mind. The voters, the taxpayers, through a property tax, or potentially through an LOT. And again, one cannot prejudge that the LOT will cover all of the bond or not. We don't know that. We don't have enough information to know that answer. But it certainly will make a substantial dent in an annual bond cost, principal and interest. And it may, in fact, not need any more additional money from the taxpayers. Don't know. No promises being made. But it's certainly going to make a significant progress. And the long-term debts that we've got coming, if the voters approve them, are significant. To sunset this in 5 or 10 years is going to put us in a place where passing a bond is going to be even harder than it ever would be. Because if we're in year 5 of a sunset plan, who's going to pay for the next 15? Where's that going to come from? Having this open, and if the voters want to repeal this, they certainly can do this as well. There is an ability to cease this, to stop this. It is not only through a sunset. I think there are just too many long-term goals here that, as several people have already said on the board, have been discussed significantly, not with necessarily tight numbers on them yet, because we're not to that point. But as Leah talks about, there's a bridge coming in 2031. We've got a 5-year road plan that we're going into year 2. We've got, by certainly in the next few years, from what I understand of Brent's scope and sequence of where he's headed to get us there, we're getting ready to start having engineering firms or architectural firms begin to assess what our needs are for police, for fire, and whatnot. Those numbers are going to be coming up reasonably soon, which means we'll be hopefully discussing it as a board, but then hopefully putting something in front of the voters within a few years at best, at most, I would think. This is not the time to sunset something. If it's not working right, the voters can vote to repeal it, and then we'll have to deal with the town will deal with the result of that vote. But I support what Leah has presented or spoken to. I appreciate all the time and effort she's put into it, and I personally support the more detailed articles that are on the bottom of our attachment, the 3 articles that list what Don read, 1 for meals and alcohol, 1 for sales, and 1 for rooms. But the language is the same in all 3 of those. And I would not support a sunset to be put on this.
And I would just add that it wouldn't just be up to the voters to repeal it. The board itself could, put that article out there for the voters to consider. Richard?
I'm just kind of echo what George says. The paving project and the sidewalks that's over $2 million, 5-year plan. And that's really low hanging fruit, with given all the other things that we've talked about ad nauseum, that we need to have done in our town. So with the idea of a sunset, it is what it is, 15 years of deferred maintenance or more, maybe. But we could be talking 15 or $20 million in projects that we need to have done in our town. And it's real money. And the longer we wait, the more it's going to cost. And like, if we can't make the payments for like you said, if we're to a 5-year payoff on a bond, then what do we do then? And the debt reduction piece of this is, I think this list of things checks off everything that we need to do for our community to make this work the best. And I will also say that I don't want to sound like, but sometimes in this conversation, I feel like we're maybe putting the cart before the horse, because we don't know what we're going to realize for revenues. We know what the projection is. It could be more, it could be less. So if we don't know, we can't say, okay, we're going to get $5 million in 5 years, because it might be 10, it might be 2. So we don't know where we're going to be in 5 years or 10 years. So I think a sunset is a bad idea. We need to see where we're going to be and go from there. To go back to the agenda item is draft of local option tax articles. The very last line, I don't know and maybe I'm wrong, and please correct me if I am, but without increasing total town revenues. I don't understand what that.
General operating fund. So it's to differentiate that this is really for capital and special projects rather than just further revenue to go into like general operating fund that can be used for anything.
Okay.
Thank you. Anything else from the board before I open it up? And again, what we're hoping to do tonight is just give the administration some direction on the language that's in front of us, and then allow them to give it to council so that we can get this reviewed. Any community comments? Come on up and introduce yourselves. And please, the item is just the wording of the article.
Yeah. Martin Green. Just a question. Would the economic and community development part, would that include recreation, library?
That's a good question.
I was just wondering what that means,
Yeah. Community development. It would seem like that would fall under that umbrella.
Just wondering. Yeah, and I do have a comment too, which I will hold.
Hi, I'm Nate Byer. I just wanted to ask, how are you?
Sorry, what's your name?
Nate Byer. Just asking, how do you define rooms? Does this include sort of Airbnb type short-term rentals, or is this just hotel rooms per se?
It does include short-term rentals.
Perfect.
Thank you. Which would be a significant portion of the rooms,
Yeah, that's.
since we don't have a large number of hotels.
Jamie Jarrett, just want to let you know that I'm 100% behind the way it's written. It's spot on. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. Come on.
Evelyn Throne. Yeah, I also think it's really spot on. I do have one question. Other emergency needs. That seems a little vague. And I wondered if it's possible that because if this goes through, that the funds would take some of the pressure off some of the other projects, and why does it need to say other emergency needs when we have that fund that can cover some of, the emergency needs? I'm not against it. I just am not quite sure why it's in there.
Can I?
Yeah.
But
go ahead, Brent.
so that fund, it's very restricted what it can be used for. What does it have? Like 600 and something thousand? Oh, 300,000. So if we had a fire to this building, how much do you think it would cost for us to relocate town clerk's office and us to another building and then rebuild or evaluate where else we would be located? So a simple fire. And, so while we have $300,000 in an emergency fund that's very restricted, $300,000 these days doesn't go far, and it can be something very simple. If you look at the furnaces at the garage that we lease, that we're responsible for, those are aging and need replacement. And, there's just so many liabilities that we have that could eat up more than half of this fund immediately if there was a fire or any sort of damage to any of the buildings that we use. So that's what this language addresses. It's not, it's to be clear that these funds are not to be used for, general operating, projects that don't require large capital expenditures.
Thank you, Brent.
So I just want to clarify, because I think that's something else I learned too. So this emergency fund that we have in our general budget, the emergency fund has emergency as defined by the state of Vermont, correct?
Yes.
So by saying other emergency needs would be how our town defines an emergency, correct?
At the select board,
Yeah.
So in other words, it wouldn't be up to us to define emergency. It's
Right.
already been defined for us by the state.
By the state, but
For those funds, not
for that specific $300,000 fund. This allows us to have a little bit more flexibility with emergency.
Go ahead. And then Laura, you're up next.
I'm in agreement with
Nate?
what that's right, Jerry Throne. I'm in agreement with what I've heard here tonight. There should not be a sunset on it, just like our taxes never sunset. And, so one of the things that this can help us with is reduction of our taxes. So I don't see where taxes are ever going to end. There should be no reason why this would sunset. There's also going to be needs that are continuing needs after the major paving and sidewalk stuff is done on maintenance. Jordan said, and the consultant told us that the paving only lasts so long, and then it wears down. You have to put a new wearing course on. So these are all things that are continuing expenses that we should not have any sunsets for.
Thank you, Jerry. Laura Streets.
Sorry. Question for Tina. Tina, this emergency fund that we have, how does it increase? I'm assuming it's currently invested, but is there a limit how much, and how is money put into that fund?
It's put into the fund when the select board wants us to. If we have a big unallocated reserve, so to speak, they can vote to put more money in the fund. But there is limitations, but the limitation of what you can put in there is a calculation of the prior year's budget. And since our budget's like $9 million, I mean, obviously, I think the last time we calculated it, you could put in almost $700,000. We've only put in $300,000 because it really ties that money up, and you can count on never using it unless you have like a FEMA event or something really, really major.
Yeah.
So it was my recommendation not to put a ton of money in, because then that really limits. We're sitting on a bunch of money that could be used for other purposes. But it can be increased if the select board chooses to do so.
Okay, thank you. I was curious how money gets into that fund. And again, I'm just going to reiterate, I am concerned about vagueness, and that we've had 2 budgets where people have voted against rec. So to all of a sudden say that, you know, this LOT, community development, can be used, I think is a little deceitful. And that's why I'm concerned about the vagueness.
I think economic and community development gives some availability of resources for Adele to attract economic development and to help us perhaps maybe match grants as we try to build out the presence of the Lamoille Valley Rail Trail and other economic and community developments.
That's why she's in the budget. That's why we have a
topic.
That's why we have a line item for that. And she raises money through events. Just it's the vagueness I'm concerned.
Okay, thank you, Laura. Thank you, Leah. So at this point, I'm going to ask the board, are we okay with sending this to administration and this being the language that we would want to have administration pursue with legal counsel?
I would like to add one more sentence at the end that says each expenditure would be approved and voted by the select board at a warned public meeting.
You got that, Brent?
Yes.
Just say that one more time.
Each expenditure would be approved and voted by the select board at a warned public meeting. Which is no different than how we do business anyways, but it just, again, makes it clear to voters.
Can I have the floor, Don?
Yes, you can.
I'm not questioning what you're trying to do, Leah.
Yeah. But does it?
By using the word expenditure as opposed to project, but I don't have the word, but I'm thinking expenditure is something we're going to see on a warrant. And I don't believe that's your intent. Your intent is to say, we're going to put this money towards the Katie's Falls Bridge local share.
Correct.
We're going to put this money towards continued paving for the next 3-4 years.
It would either be project oriented or to reduce property tax.
So I would just ask for maybe a different word that has the same context that you want to get in, Leah. That's
Okay.
I'm being picky, but I don't think
Picky's
you
good.
want us to
No,
be
Picky's
voting
good.
on every time we've got a $4,000 bill on a road project.
Correct. No, you're
That
good.
we've got to take some action on it.
Each of
Yeah,
these.
I can work on wordsmithing it. And I can, we're meeting again on the 5th. So before then I could circulate to the select board and I understand what I had the same sort of thought, George, like when we say expenditure, are we looking at like,
Yeah.
Not every nickel and dime that we're.
so I won't be able to come up with it right now here at the table, but I can think about it.
If Leah's okay with
Yeah.
that train of thought, then I'm okay with you working the words, Brett. And again, if Richard and Don are okay with that train of thought as well.
That's kind of what I was thinking. I understand the thought of it, the premise of it, but to go, I just wondered if we got in the weeds on something that we couldn't get out of, if it ended up being more cumbersome for the town as a whole. By adding that in there, because we typically do bring everything in front of the town anyway.
And on the same, sort of wordsmithing, Laura was bringing up concern with economic community development, wanting me, like, I guess as a resident, you could think, well, does that mean they're going to use this money to hire somebody? Again, no, it's not for general fund use, but it could be a specific economic or community development project. One of the only negative feedback that we received repeatedly from the state for our downtown designation was what they felt was a limited amount of money that we were paying to MAC. And they kept telling us, you really need to find a way to increase that amount for really proper economic development for your businesses and your community. And so I built into it, that the select board has been discussing LOT since I forget what year, and based upon a study from EPR, economic study, it'd bring in X amount of dollars. If only I think 3 or 4% of that was used, it would bring in $60,000. And that was the way that I addressed that issue with the state. So I can understand Laura's concern with residents being concerned that somehow this would just be used as some sort of slush fund for hiring people or something. And I can try to work on that as well, to get more specific. But we have a limited number of days here, so.
Right. Okay. Any other thoughts on this? Comments? So Brent and Judy, you feel like you have what you need? Go forward.
I'd like a head nod from like the majority of
Does
the.
it need to be a motion?
No, we don't need a motion, because you'll be voting on the actual articles. I just wanted like direction. Is this the direction you want to go in? Is there something you want changed?
I think the only change is Leah's addition at this point. Laura, we're all nodding in the affirmative here.
I said my piece, so it's up to, you guys, it's pretty clear that you don't agree with me, so let's put it to the voters.
I'd say you have direction from the majority of the board.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
I maybe should mention this as a new agenda item, maybe, but should we start working on some educational tools regarding local option tax, just to help voters understand what it is?
It's not warned, so we're not going to talk about
Okay.
it tonight, but that can certainly go on the meeting on the 5th, and it's something we've talked about a lot in the past. And
I would think we would want something for the town community
yeah,
day.
it's been part of conversations I've had with administration, so yeah. I think it's absolutely necessary. In fact, members of the community are asking for it. They have been to meetings, and people want to be educated. They want to. So, yeah.
Okay.
Number 3 under new business, continuation of the manager's proposed budget discussion. So I know Brent has a few words to start with, and then I believe Tina has some information for us. And then we have a conversation among ourselves, and the public, I'm sure, will join in regarding the budget and where the budget's at this point. So go ahead, Brent.
So a budget process is not static, it's always evolving, and we're projecting out. When we first start this, we're projecting out crazy amount of months in advance. And things were delayed this year because of everything from CIP and other things from the feds being delayed. So our total operating base budget, I believe what I presented was 0.46, so under 50 bips on the expense side. We've tweaked it a little bit, and now it's up to 0.59, so it's well under 1% growth in expenses, which is I would say exceptional in this environment. So I wanted to just highlight that to all of you. It is in your packet, and total operating base budget is now at 0.59%. And then we're continuing to have revenue pressures. And so one of those is with EMS, the big beautiful bill. It's going to impact rural communities, with EMS services. This past year, we increased our billing rates to become more in line with the rest of the state. And while that's terrific, more than 90% of our population are Medicare, Medicaid. So that caps what we can collect. And so Tina came to me to make me aware of concern that she found after receiving some Medicare and Medicaid reimbursement after our billing increase. And so we began researching more in depth to try to really nail down what we could be expecting for Medicare and Medicaid. So we reached out to the state, gotten no response. We reached out to other EMS providers, and we don't have specific information about 2027 especially, but wanted Tina here tonight to talk about basically the decrease that we're forecasting in revenues from EMS, and then just make you all aware of it and have a discussion. So Tina.
So as Brent said, we didn't know, we increased our rates starting October 1st. And I was monitoring this, and when we started getting payments in November, I realized that the payment that we were getting were not increasing at all, even though our billing rate had increased. So that was something that I needed to point out to Brent, and I needed to rework the figures, because the last thing I want is for us to anticipate all this money coming in and not have it happen. We need to make sure we're right. So I have given you all a new revenue detailed sheets. And along with those sheets, if you look, there's 2 additional sheets that will show you the billing revenue projection. This is the new projection that we have, and it's in the detailed sheets. We had in the past, we had estimated write-offs at like 26%. But looking at the new amounts the amounts we're getting from Medicare and Medicaid, it looks like even though we have increased billing rates, we're having to write off more because they're not increasing their portion. So now our write-offs are roughly 48% is what we're getting now. The second sheet that I have is highlighted, and this is totally, I have no way of knowing what Vermont's rates for Medicaid will be. Their rates are contingent on Medicare's rates, and Medicare has no idea yet what they're going to do. So I took what I knew, which is what we're getting right now. And you'll see that highlighted on these sheets, the new rates for Medicare, ALS and BLS. And we roughly write off 46.71% of Medicare payments. Medicaid payments, the new rate and the BLS new rate and ALS new rate, we roughly write off 49.6% of what we bill. So I did a calculation to average those 2 percentages, because I have no way of knowing, you know, what calls will be ALS, what calls will be BLS, who will be paying for what. So the new write-off percentage is 48%. I think that that's probably about the best that I can do at this point on using the data for calls for what we actually had for calls for 24, 25 in terms of how many BLS calls or how many ALS calls or whatever. But I cannot say for sure who the person paying for these are going to be. So it was very difficult to do this, because I don't like having so many things unknown. So in doing this little procedure, we ended up having to write off about $100,000 more than what we anticipated for revenue. But we also were able to put back on $68,000 of income, because we previously did not have a figure budgeted for Elmore, which now we do. And there was another small revenue that was increased. So all in all, our revenues are going to be underfunded now by $35,000 less. They're going to be $35,000 less than we had anticipated them to be.
So that impacts, you know, the obviously the total appropriation. And provides, creates more pressure on that. But it's better to be,
So yeah, by using the new revenue figures and what all the brand new up-to-date information, it brings the total bottom line to a 9.6% increase.
So can I break in there? You all set?
Absolutely. No, absolutely.
Thank you for that, Tina. I had the privilege of sitting down, and privilege isn't the right word, but listening to this earlier this morning. And so I'm gonna say it again, once again, the operating budget's not the issue. It's pretty obvious. 0.59% increase is not a concern. Revenue is the issue. And then this is just another little bit more bad news for us in terms of revenue. It was probably about 4 weeks ago. I made a comment 3 or 4 weeks ago, and it was back when our budget was increasing 9%. When the proposed budget was 9%. And I said, what if, because 9% is a big number, 9.6% is obviously a bigger number, and in my mind, I think it's a very unappealing number. It's an unappealing number for me, and I think it's an unappealing number for the voters in Morristown. I don't want to put a 9.6% budget out there because I'm very worried about what might happen. So I think we need to do something. We need to bring this down. And the operating budget's already down. So 3 or 4 weeks ago, I mentioned those special warning items. And I said, what if? And it was a what if at that point. What if we took that 1 cent away for the fire department capital fund? What if we took the 1 cent away for the highway department capital equipment fund? Conservation Commission, thank you very much, has already agreed to not ask for the 1/4 cent. I appreciate that, Jerry, very much, the chair of the Morristown Conservation Commission. And then the Bridge and Highway Infrastructure Fund, the proposal was 2 cents. That's all built into the 9.6%. It's all built into the 9%. It's all built into the 9.6%. These are savings accounts, essentially. This is money put away for future needs. By the way, that Bridge and Highway Infrastructure Fund, that doesn't cover all the paving. Jordan came to us and asked for 5.5 cents, not 2 cents, 5.5 cents, a lot more to get the paving done. But my point right now is, thanks to Tina this morning, we were able to crunch some numbers pretty quickly. And what I had said 3 or 4 weeks ago was, what if we just didn't put those out there? What if we took away the 1 cent, the 1 cent, and the 2 cents, 4 cents, obviously, and all? And at that point, it brought it down to about a 3.4% increase, which is a pretty palatable budget. But we're not talking 9% anymore, we're talking 9.6. So now, if we were to do it now, starting at 9.6, and we remove those special warning items, and the board has those sheets in front of them. I think they're seeing them for the first time tonight. I saw a little bit of this morning. If we took those 4 cents away, 1, 1, and 2, it brings it down to 4.2%. Quite a bit lower. I think 4.2, it might, 4.2 is certainly a whole lot more palatable than 9.6. But it does mean not putting money into some significant savings accounts for the future. If we were to, for example, we've got a couple of different scenarios here. If we were to delete the 1 cent for the fire department, 1 cent for highway capital equipment, and made Bridge and Highway, rather than 2 cents, made it 1%, it brings it down to 5.5%. Some might argue that's still in the palatable region. There's lots of different scenarios to play with here. If we don't fund the fire, don't fund the highway, but leave 2 cents in Bridge, 6.9%. Argue that's starting to get a little bit more closer to what's not palatable, to use that term. So I'm going to suggest, I think the board, I think we have to have a conversation about this tonight. I think we need to, I've talked to the administration. I'm not sure where the other big ticket items are, where the other big numbers are. I don't know where they are. I've talked to enough people to know that enough people don't seem to know where they are either. This is where they are. This is where the big numbers are. But it does, it does put us in a situation where we're not putting money into the kinds of funds that we should be putting money into. And as I said, the operating budget's not the problem, revenue is the problem. And we have to present something responsible to the voters. I think we as a board have to put something out there that the voters are likely to embrace. I don't think 9.6 is it. I don't think anything close to 10% is it. Not in this world, not in probably any world. So I'll just maybe leave it there at this point. I don't know if anybody wants to make a comment. Clearly, what I'm suggesting is that we take all those special articles away. Special warning items. Maybe we could live with 1 cent bridge and highway and leave it at 5.5. But go ahead, Richard.
I kind of, well, I don't disagree with what you're saying. Is that the 9.6 it's a big number. And the other, like I said at the last meeting, we've already, this budget was about as skinny as it could be at 9% before the 9.6. I do have some hesitation about taking the all of them away for sure. I don't want to look like we're kicking the can down the road again. I think a lot of our success as a community will be based on the outcome of the local option tax and how that works. But I would feel more comfortable about leaving some money in for bridge and highway, a penny
For bridge and highway.
Yeah. I know 5.5 is still a chunk, but it's far better than a 9.6 or 9. I can't see getting rid of everything there, but I appreciate the Conservation Commission's gesture. $0.25 as well.
George?
Thanks. I want to first thank Brent and Tina. Bringing bad news is never any fun. At this point in the game, it's even less fun than ever. But we need to hear that number. And it's not through any miscalculation. It's that facts are coming out at Brent, at Tina, late in the game on a bill that is going to affect us all in many, many ways. So I want to say thank you to Tina and thank you to Brent for being as clear as you have been with the situation and why we're in where we're in. And it's not good to be the bearer of bad news, but we need to hear it. Or else we're going to have expected monies that are going to come in and they won't come in, and we're going to end up with the problem anyway. So we might as well deal with it up front. So thank you, first of all, for being that open and clear about it. Richard, I'm thinking about the 1 cent versus the 2 cent, as you suggested. My concern is neither one of them is enough to do year 2 of the road project. Brent, when he first presented his budget back in early December, said, it's not enough, but I don't know what to put in there. I don't think I can put 5.5 cents in there. Very, very open about what that was. So I'm not sure if 1 cent's going to generate 115,000 roughly, just doing quick off the top of my head numbers. What can Jordan do with 115,000? We're going to go backwards if that's all he's got. It'll be less than a full retreat, but it's still going to be a retreat from a 5-year project. So this becomes, for me, what is the most likely to get past the voters, that the voters are going to be willing to vote for. That's where it comes down to me, because we're short no matter what. Just as you previously said, LOT is a big part of this, and we don't know how the voters are going to speak to LOT in March. But it's certainly possible to see LOT start to generate enough funds that we could pick up on the highway project and not really lose a full year and go backwards for a year in Jordan's plans, if the voters see fit to approve that. I don't like taking them all out. I'm not sure if leaving 1% Virgin Highway gets us enough. That's my question, and I'm putting it out there because I'm not sure.
I don't disagree, but I know that the presentation that we got about our roads indicated that we had X amount of percent that were in poor, very poor. So maybe we don't. They're already passed, right? Those roads are already. We're not bringing them back without a full reconstruction. But if they don't have any money to work with, some of the ones that are in the marginal status, where they might be able to put some of that money and make them so that they don't go completely back to where we need to do a full reconstruction.
Yep.
That's kind of where my line of thinking was. I don't want to go backward, like I said about kicking the can. That was where I was coming from.
I hear you, Richard. I don't disagree. Yeah, exactly. 6, 7.
I have a couple of thoughts. When the budget first came out, and I started looking at it and thinking about it, there is no fat in that budget. And I started looking at it, the need is revenue, and there's only so many ways we can bring in revenue. Taxes on income, property taxes, and then consumption tax, which is the local option tax, sales, alcohol, meals, and rooms. It's a 3-legged stool, and right now we don't have one of the legs of the stool. So the local option tax is a huge role in our future, is my takeaway from that. And then I started researching, well, what's happening in other towns? And this scenario is happening all over the state of Vermont. There are municipalities, there's towns that are having this exact same discussion where the revenues are down and their local option tax is an active topic, but how do we gain more revenue? And statewide, the municipal budgets, as proposed right now, are ranging between an increase of 5 to 9%. That's what towns across the state are looking at. And yes, the education tax has been put forth, and Governor Scott said the property tax could be as high as a 12% increase. However, he has also proposed to offset that with $75 million from the general fund, which they did last year, and the tax increase was only 1%. So I don't take that 12% too serious right now, because that's, I think, just a warning shot to get the education conversation moving. But that said, I'm thinking, what will the town allow? I'm not comfortable with taking all the special warning items out, because we don't know what our voters will say about the local option tax, and why would we hamstring us that way? I don't want to lose the forward momentum that we have. And by not having funding for another year, I think that sets us back even further. There's no good answer to this. I would feel more comfortable with the 2 cents, even though it's not what we need. I'm also wondering, I'm looking at Tina, is not having anything going into the equipment fund for fire and highway hindering?
If you look, I believe there's some information in your packet too that has the highway and the fire capital equipment funds. That was one of the things I wanted to make sure of. And if we don't fund them for 1 year, it should not adversely affect any of our purchases, but we aren't going to be able to continue to do that year after year.
Yeah, so, I was very clear with Don, this is unsustainable. So you're betting on LOT. If LOT loses out, next year you're looking at double-digit increases if you pull out all of this. So I want to be very clear to you all that this is, I understand your concern with 9%. Like, I've been stressed about 9% since October when I was seeing initial numbers. But this is deferring not only bridges, roads, sidewalks, it's deferring equipment funds. We're already spending taxpayer money on interest for vehicles. That if we put money aside and we could plan ahead, we'd be saving taxpayer money. But instead, we have insufficiently funded capital equipment funds for fire, EMS. We don't even have one for police.
Or EMS.
Excuse me. Yeah, so fire and highway. So it's really costing the taxpayers money until we can dig out of all of this. And that's what's especially frustrating for me. Another concern I had was we've initiated bringing in grants. And we've been very successful, especially around infrastructure. So I quickly connected with Jordan and Tina, and I have some positive news. If you can make anything positive out of a discussion of removing all these articles. We have 3 grants. Town Highway Structures Program to paint the Favorite Bridge, which is currently rotting. Okay. Our match amount for that is $86,080. Small scale bicycle pedestrian grant. That'll be used to replace 800 feet of non-ADA compliant sidewalk on Elmore Street. That has a $50,000 match. 2025 VTrans scoping bicycle and pedestrian grant. Scoping study to determine the bicycle facilities and lane configurations needed to safely connect the Lamoille Valley Rail Trail to local businesses and restaurants within Morrisville. Real economic impact for the community for the future. That's a $10,000 match. So those total that we need to match with grants that we've been awarded is already $146,000 roughly. We're waiting on reimbursement for $134,000 from grants. So our BNI fund is $788,000. We're paying $739,000 for 2025 paving and sidewalk work. And then we have $134,000, that we're waiting to come in from grant reimbursement. And then you deduct out this $146,000 in grants that we need to match if we're going to take advantage of them. Otherwise, we're throwing away more money. That's going to leave us, if you guys were not to fund bridge and highway with another article, warning item, that'll leave us with approximately $37,000. So at least we can cover grants and we're not giving up grant funds. And so I wanted to share that with you so you have that perspective and making your decisions.
Thank you, Brent. That is, good news. Laura, online, you've been waiting again. Thank you.
So I've got a question for Tina, but I'll go to that afterwards. These current appropriations, again, having been through 5 budgets, one of the conversations continually from Dennis and from Chief Leno is that when they have to buy something, they need funding, and to have to come and beg for money for something and we have to find it has been very detrimental, because again, we end up, it cost us a lot of money because then they can't make deals because they don't have the money, and there's a time delay. So I am adamantly against canceling those. They are a sure thing. We need the money as basically operating funds. And to not put our chiefs in a situation of constantly having to come in and beg for basic equipment. That's what this was put in for. We've done that, we're going in circles. If we take it out, we got to put it back in. We know it works. We need to stay with it. And I just want to add also that this is the first conversation that the board has had about all the appropriations. So if anyone else has had conversations and implied that the select board wants you to remove yours, I've not been party to that. So this is the first conversation that we've had. Tina, a question for you. Given that Obamacare is officially going away, which means there's going to be a lot of people uninsured, in your calculations, the uninsured people then become basically billable. And in the past, has that not been a problem collecting from non-insured? I'm concerned that we may be looking at more losses from the uninsured. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, and that is a concern, but I understand that they are going to be doing something around subsidies again, probably not to the degree they are now, but I don't think they're going to be taking them 100% away. And the people that, most of the people that we serve are Medicaid and Medicare eligible. They don't carry their own health insurance. They have health insurance through either the state or the federal government.
Okay.
So I don't think that that's going to be, it may be somewhat of an issue, but it's not going to be the major issue. Like we have 50% of our people that are self-insured and they're on the exchange. Okay. Yeah, I don't think it's going to be like that. And this is the very first time we've talked about these articles because it was just something that we thought about doing this morning. So you have not been out of the loop in that.
No, I know that. I'm just hearing rumors that there's been discussion out there. So I just wanted to be really clear to nip that in the bud, that this is the first discussion.
Adamantly say, Laura, you're right. Tina's right. We had a discussion this morning and that's the first time we've talked about it. So, and now we're talking about it at the board level for the first time, but it's out there. I mean, we've got to, I think, figure out some way to get this down significantly from 9.6%. And this is one conversation that might get us in that direction.
So
Tina?
Well, it's not ideal not to fund those equipment funds. You're right, Laura, about that. It's not ideal, but I projected out 3 and 4 years and it will not adversely affect us buying equipment. That equipment fund is only used really for down payments. It's not used to fund the entire piece of equipment. So, you take 50,000 out 1 year for a truck or 70,000 out. And in the case of the fire department, they don't buy vehicles very often. So when they do, they take $200,000 out, which happened last year. So they're not going to be looking at replacing anything anytime within the next 3 or 4 years. I would hate to see us not fund it next year, but I don't believe that not funding it for this year is going to adversely affect anybody's purchasing or anybody's what they've asked for in their budget.
I just wondered if Laura referring to this that we just saw today. That's what I'm wondering because I spoke to that was spoken to.
This is the letter from Jerry Throne from the Morristown Conservation.
I just wonder if that's what Laura's referring to.
Is that what you're referring to, Laura? Morristown Conservation Commission, that letter?
I've been talking with a lot of people around town and I'm hearing that from a lot of different people that the select board has decided things and it's not just this, it's other things. And so I have concerns that, and again, this gets back to, there are 5 members on this board and that we have to be ethically careful that when we're speaking to people that we're speaking as an individual and not representing the board. And even as chair, there are very specific times when the board agrees to let the chair speak. But I think that's where some of the confusion's coming in. And so I just want us to be careful going forward that, you know, when you're speaking to people, that you're making it clear that it's your opinion and not the opinion of the board.
Well, I hope you're doing everything you can to squash those rumors. I will certainly do everything I can to squash those rumors as well, because that's all they are. So
Yep.
thank you, Laura, for saying that, because no, I'm not doing that. Of course not.
So
Anyways,
I am gonna ask, because I am, again, I worry about losing the momentum that we have, and we have been as aggressive as we can be in addressing the 15 years of deferred maintenance, with the result of a 9.6% increase in a budget that hopefully still keeps us moving forward. Because right now, all we have is the budget. We don't know what's going to happen with the local option tax. So I'm trying to be disciplined and not think and be an optimist and think that's gonna, we can count on that yet, because we can't, we don't know yet. So I've had conversations with folks and they're like, we don't like it, but we are looking at kind of the can has stopped. There's no more road to kick it down. There's no can to kick down. So maybe we suck it up and accept the budget as is with the 9.6% increase. Hopefully educate about the local option tax and see if we can get that passed. And then next year would look different. Because I think, and I'll be honest, I continue to, I stay up at night, starting to mimic you, stay up at night with how do you get this budget lower in a responsible way. Cutting it in half, cutting the capital expenditure in half makes it palatable, but it's still a risk, and I think it has us moving backwards.
and what I wanted to do tonight was at least bring one option to the board to show the board what it might take to get it down. So yeah, I mean, we can stick with 9.6 and leave all those in there, but this is the kind of cutting it's going to take to get it to something we might. I mean, you mentioned most of the towns across the state are looking at a 5 to 9% increase in their budgets. They're having the same conversations. I can't imagine any of them like the idea of anything close to 9%. They probably aren't terribly, they're not sleeping well on 5% either.
No,
And-
well, I know Hardwick said they won't go, they don't want it to go above 6. They're trying to get it in at 6.
But the one thing we did do tonight was we had a conversation about what it might take to get it down below 5%. I think below 5% is a very reasonable and very responsible budget, given the world that we're in today. But it's going to take this kind of thing to do that, which in the end,
Which means no capital.
which in the end might not be palatable to us to take to the voters. So we need to have that conversation in the future. We don't need to make this decision tonight, but we know what some of the decisions are that we're going to have to make down the road, or what some of those decisions might look like down the road. I'm going to open it up to comments to the public in just a second, but go ahead.
I do want to go back and hark on one thing that Brent said, and we're experiencing it now with the lack of the $500,000 of unallocated fund balance that come in for a couple of years. Now all of a sudden we've got a problem because we've gotten used to that money coming in, and now we don't have it, and it's driving. A vast majority of this revenue problem is based on not having that money available anymore. We've already given it back. And to the point that I want to bring back up that Brent made was, if we take all of these out, the 4 articles, next year, if we want to put them back in, we're putting back in 4.25 cents. And I'll include the 1/4 cent that Conservation Fund has waived for this year. 4.25 cents next year is gonna feel like a shocker. Again, it's gonna be not the $500,000, but it's in the same game of if you're inconsistent with your budget from year to year, that's what sends shockwaves through the community. Because they don't know what's coming on. One year it's a good year, one year it's a lousy year. It's not this nice smooth trajectory that I think most people assume will happen. The tax rates are not going to go down, but they're going to be under control, kind of. We're in a situation now where, for two different reasons, one that had to be done because there's no money left in unallocated fund is 147,000, Tina, after the 500,000 that is committed for this year already.
Yes.
And an unallocated fund balance, that's not much money. And now we create the next potential FY28 hole, which is going to be trying to put these 4.25 cents back in. Is not, this is the least of the worst ideas that we're trying to come up with, is what we're coming out with, because there's no good idea here. If there was, Brent and Tina would have come in and said, yeah, we got it all figured out, guys, here's our suggestion. There is no easy way to do this. To get the number down to what each of us might have a different number in our head of what's passable. I don't know. Certainly, as it goes down from 9.6 to 4.2, it's more passable, obviously, but is it best in the long-term interest? On the other hand, is a defeated budget. How problematic is that? I'm trying to not have an attitude towards it. How problematic is to have a defeated budget? There's a part of me that runs through and says, we should know what LOT is if this budget went, if we left it alone and let the voters vote. We've got a budget, they say no. We now know what's going on with LOT. If they've said no to LOT and they've said no to this budget, we don't have a canoe and we don't have a paddle. And it's leaking somewhere on top of it. That's not an idea I like either.
No.
But I don't like 9.6 as an increase. But I agree that we're going backwards if we stop taking out this 1 cent here and 1 cent there and 2 cents someplace else. And it seems like we can't get ahead of ourselves, to your point, Brent.
Now, if LOT does pass, you might decide next year that you can use LOT rather than the special warning items for equipment and do additional LOT for fire and EMS, right? But it's it's a gamble.
Yeah.
Because you pull this out, and you don't have a canoe, you don't have a paddle.
Then no life jacket.
Yeah.
What about if you put in a 1 cent for the bridge and infrastructure fund and a 0.5 cent for fire and a 0.5 cent for highway? You would be looking again at, you'd be looking at a 6.9% increase, but you'd still be funding everything at least a little bit.
Yeah,
Well, I'm sorry.
that is the middle road, isn't it? Yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
right, I'm sorry. If I look at Tina's work, the highway department, Tina, correct me if I'm reading it wrong, is looking for 125,000 for next year in their capital equipment fund for a new tandem, replace number 61.
Yes,
And my eyes are working, trade the backhoe for 200 grand.
yes.
Okay. So those are next year items. So they're obviously not the total cost of the equipment, but that's what you're talking about.
That's what's in their
To
budget,
draw down.
right? So we would just use 125 out of there, which would still leave us with 72,000
Yeah, okay, yes.
overall.
Yeah, but again, that's not
Okay.
in the size of this equipment. That's not a lot of money.
no.
Yeah, I hate to stop talking about tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars like they're not much money, but in the reality world,
Not for buying equipment.
not for this kind of stuff.
And 72 does not cover us for the following year.
No. No, it does not, because now we need 150 the year after that, right? So
You know what I'm saying?
I think we've got to cover the highway, and that's a penny and change, at least to cover the 125. it still doesn't get us where we need to be. 2 cents would be better for the highway capital debt. But then Richard makes a very valid point about we don't fund our highway infrastructure work. Even at a lower amount, we're going, it's how far backwards are we going to go? And I don't like that idea either.
Maybe Tina's proposal is not a bad one. 1/2 cent for fire, 1/2 cent for highway, and 1 cent for or 1/2 cent for the highway capital fund,
Yeah, that gets us
and 1 cent for.
7,000.
Laura's hand is up.
Yeah, I see Laura's hand as well. Go ahead, Laura.
So, again, having gone through this, the taxpayers, from my understanding, we're a service industry, a $10 million service industry, and we need to supply services to our taxpayers. So I appreciate George, and I think, George, you were right. Ping-ponging the budget makes people crazy. So I really like Tina's idea of reducing them down, but not getting rid of them, to give us a year kind of breathing. So we're not, the taxpayers know the money's going to certain things. It gives us a little bit of, security until we know what's going on, rather than just getting rid of it. So I'm in favor of reducing them, but not getting rid of them. Because, and so Brent, I guess I would ask you, if we reduce them based on what Tina said, does that give us enough money to have the matched grants for a year? Because none of this is happening until July anyway. So would it give us the funding to have for the match grants, match funds for the grant?
We have the funding now for the match grants.
Yeah, our estimates are that
Okay.
if you were to zero it out totally for the Bridge and Infrastructure Fund, to be able to take advantage of the grants and not have to turn them back over, we'd have about $37,000 left in the fund after those grants were, our matching a portion of those grants was expended. So that should be okay. I mean, that was
Okay.
something I was very concerned about. Now, you'd not only be kicking the can down the road, but you'd also be, you'd be, one's only a 10% match. Another was 50, but the other one was only 20. So you'd be giving back money that was handed to us.
Yeah.
I mean, we had to apply for it, but
Yeah. Well, and I just want us to be careful because, we had a major accident with one of our trucks this year. So things happen. So again, and that's where I get into not completely giving that money away, having some money there. And granted, we have an emergency fund, but again, it's really restricted, but it just gives us a little bit of cushion. And most importantly, and this gets back to even the LOT, the taxpayers want to know that where exactly their money's going. And these allocated funds, dedicated funds, guarantee them that where that money's going. So I think they're very important, but I see the need to cut down because I am very concerned about the budget passing. So I do like if Tina's numbers work, that's what I would like to go with.
So at this point, I'm going to open it up to the audience. Is there anybody that would like to comment?
Can I just ask Tina, can you clarify what your numbers were? Is that 1/2 cent?
Well, I just suggested 1 cent for the highway, bridge infrastructure fund, 1/2 cent for fire and 1/2 cent for highway, which brings the bottom line to 6.9%.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure we were on the same page.
Hi, everybody. Julie Pickett. I'm a library trustee. Thank you so much for giving us 2.8% increase. After hearing your discussion, I realize how difficult this is for all of you. We do need more in the library than that. We have to fund a person that we're going to lose in August, but we'll try to make it work. I also think, is this on?
Should be.
I also think 9.6% might not pass the vote. So I think you do have to get that down. And if you're adding taxes, option taxes as well, people are going to see tax, 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 tax. Even though the option tax is going to help the town, it's still voting for taxes. So I do think you should listen to Tina. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Julie. Anybody else? Yeah.
Jamie Jarrett. Again, I think if we look at what Tina said about Medicare and Medicaid, the percentage of people in this town is 90%. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, somewhere along.
Okay, which is pretty high. It's a very high percentage of people in the town. Take into account that anybody that is on Medicare, and I'll use myself as an example, I'm on Medicare, and I've always had Medicare Advantage where I didn't have any costs to that other than what the Medicare cost was itself. This year coming up, we had to go out and buy insurance. So when I take the Medicare, what they're going to take out of my Social Security and what I pay on a monthly basis for a year for my spouse and myself is $13,000. So you put that $13,000 on top of what our new tax rates are, right, from being reassessed and the whole 9 yards, I'm looking at $24,000 a year in just between current tax rate and health insurance. So I guess I'm more concerned, not for myself, but if we're talking about 80 to 90% of people in this town, how the hell are they going to afford this? I understand where the needs are in the town as well, but I also agree with Don, what you were saying, Don, regarding 9.6% is not palatable. And if we can get it down, I think, Tina, you said 6.9%. Okay, it's 3% drop from what it currently is. Is that more palatable? I would hope it is, but I don't know. I'd hate to be the bearer of bad news, but how many people are going to agree to that too? So I think you're in a quandary.
Yeah. Thank you, Jamie. Maybe part of the good news, if there's any, is, again, we don't need to make this decision tonight, but we've had the conversation tonight. We've had the conversation starter tonight. But thank you for that.
Jerry Throne. I think if I heard everything correctly, that the fire department infrastructure fund, they're not looking to use those funds for at least another 2 or 3, maybe 4 years. And I'm not sure where the highway department is with their expenditures, but it seems to me that it would make more sense to put the ½ cent that was proposed in each of those back into highway to give them a full 2%, 2 cents, because you really can't do much in the way of work with only $116,000. But all you're going to do is patch some potholes. You're really not going to do any real work. And so what's going to happen with these roads going through another year of wear and tear and freezing and thawing and all that, is just going to tear them up even more. So that the roads that cannot be repaired correctly will have to have some kind of patch put on them, skim coat or something like that. And I'm sure, that if you check with Jordan, I think he would probably agree with this. So it seems to me that the more responsible thing is to put the money in the Bridge Infrastructure Fund.
Thank you, Jerry. Anybody else? So Is there a hand up? I think that's the cursor. Yeah. Anybody online? Well, I thank you, Tina. I thank you, Brent. All the work, Judy, all the work that you guys have done to get us to the point that we're at. We as a board have some work to do. We have some homework to do. You know, it's obviously lots of different iterations. We're hearing all these different iterations tonight, and we're going to have to choose one of them at some point. Again, I'm not sure that there's any other big ticket items out there. I think we've unearthed the ones that are available to us, and none of this feels good. Go ahead.
Just the conversation that we've had tonight makes me also think that a lot of our issue comes from decisions made on the state and federal level. And so particularly as our state legislature is starting to reconvene in January, it would behoove everyone to let your local legislature know that the health insurance and healthcare, it's unmanageable. It's not sustainable, and they need to address it. And again, they also need to address how they fund education. They need to address how they fund the transportation fund, because the state transportation fund doesn't have the resources to help the towns with our highway and sidewalks. So all those are state issues that we should also be pressing our legislators to address so that it doesn't roll down to us struggling with these questions.
And I'll just remind everybody, if you want a chance to speak to your local legislators, you can do it Monday morning, January 5th at Lemoore Union High School. The first breakfast with the legislators will be happening. So I'll be there. Hopefully, I know there's a few people in the audience I think are going to be there as well. Okay, I think, are we done with this discussion for tonight?
I'll move to adjourn.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
So I have a motion by Richard and a second by George. I'll remind, we're going to do a roll call vote on this. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of adjournment, George?
Aye.
Richard?
Aye.
Leah?
Aye.
Laura?
Aye.
That would be unanimous. Thank you very much, folks. Thank you for coming. Have a safe trip home.
Thanks, Tina.
Tina, thank you so much.